Good afternoon. I think we'll get things underway because I know we all have a busy afternoon and have other committee assignments we need to adjourn to pretty quickly. At this time, we'll have Representative Steve Tarvin open us with a word of prayer. Steve, what number is that, Mike?
I'm not going to need it.
I think you can handle that.
We'll pray. Our Lord, Father God in heaven, you all-knowing and all-present, we pray at this time that we would all look to you for guidance in all that we do as we undertake the people's business of the state of Georgia. Lord, and we ask forgiveness for our shortcomings, and we look to you for all that we do, which in Christ's name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
Thank you, Steve, and I hope all of us will keep that in mind, the words that Steve just said about speaking the truth, right?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, absolutely. No doubt. Thank you, Steve. We appreciate that.
Does that apply to the senator, too?
It does. That's we kind of crafted that especially for him. We're having a great show of. I started to say compassion, Senator, but it's not. I think it doesn't go quite that far. Bipartisan action between the House and the Senate. We wanted to make sure that we got these bills out.
Yes, sir.
Because you're such a great American. Other reasons that.
Just so you know, Mr. Chairman, we're moving House bills in my committee in the Senate.
Thank you so much. He does have a committee.
We just went there today.
He has several committees that he's responsible for. So we appreciate his actions in the Senate. So we have a couple of announcements. We're going to let Representative Bruce. Roger, do you have to leave, or are you going to be here for? You're here. We'll get you towards the end. We'll go ahead and get Senator Harper started here. Which one would you like to begin with, Senator?
Either one doesn't matter. We go in numerical order if that's okay with you.
Sounds like a good deal to me. So we'll start with Senate Bill 62, which is LC 287391. Is that the one you're prepared to work with us?
That would be correct, Mr. Chairman.
Senator Harper from down in the Ocilla area, we certainly appreciate you being here and your work on this committee.
Yes, sir.
Or on these issues. So we're going to turn it over to you.
I appreciate it, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. It is a pleasure to be before the distinguished Game and Fish Committee today, and I appreciate the opportunity to present Senate Bill 62 to the committee. This is a bill that was brought forward by the probate judges and the administrative office of the courts in regards to game and fish laws and how they're in the current jurisdiction in which they lie. Under current code, some violations of hunting deer at night are under the probate court's jurisdictions, and some of those are under superior court jurisdiction. What we're basically doing with this legislation is making sure that we streamline that process and allowing the probate courts to hear all game and fish violations. And part of the reason that the superior court had jurisdiction over some of these violations was because in the past if you were caught hunting deer at night under certain instances and certain circumstances, we would take your truck and your gun and all that kind of great stuff. So because of the asset forfeiture issue, those were heard in superior court. We're not really doing that anymore, or we are not doing that anymore. So therefore, there's really no need for it to go to superior court. But at the request of the defendant or at the request of the Department of Natural Resources, these cases can still go to superior court if they see so fit. But we're just making sure that the probate courts have the jurisdiction as they do under all other game and fish laws, and we're making sure that they continue to have the jurisdiction over all game and fish laws as they currently do over most, except for this one particular issue. So we're just streamlining the code section in regards to probate court jurisdiction and game and fish laws, Mr. Chairman. That's the easiest way to explain it.
What was the vote on this bill in the Senate?
Mr. Chairman, you know, you asked me a question that I don't have off the top of my head.
That's fine. That's what I thought.
No, it was not close. It was okay, we have one no vote. That's right, I do remember that no vote. Yeah, we have one no vote. Senator McCoon was the only no vote.
It got one more than what was needed, I think, is a fair thing for us to assume. Yes, let's assume that. Who's at 19? Representative Nimmer has a question.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Legal member, excuse me.
Either way, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Senator Harper, for being here. If you could, just a quick friendly question. On line 22, it says all laws and parts of laws in conflict with this act are repealed. Could you give me some examples of parts of laws that are repealed with this bill here?
Well, Representative Nimmer, that is a good question in regards to the particular language that is on line 22 of this bill, and I would defer to the Legislative Council in regards to that particular line. Is that I think we find that line in every bill that we pass in this legislature. We just want to make sure that if there's anything in code that goes against what we're trying to do and accomplish in this particular bill is taken out.
So Mr. Chairman, if I may, Senator, so the parts of laws or anything going forward, granted the passage of this bill, that could hinder the full implementation of the intent of this bill.
That would
is
be
that right?
correct, Representative.
So you just got full authority with passage here to repeal anything that gets in your way.
Basically, that is passed previously.
I like it. Senate just goes for it. I like it.
And we go for it all.
Thank you, Senator.
Yes, sir.
I'm sorry, Senator.
And Mr. Chairman, if I may, I didn't say this earlier, but this bill is supported by the Council of Probate Courts, the Council of the Superior Courts, the Administrative Office of the Courts, and also the Supreme Court of the great state of Georgia.
We have some questions about that endorsement from the probate courts. We're going to take care of that here in just a few minutes, if you don't mind.
Yes, sir.
We just want to make sure we're correct on that one. Representative Shaw.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Senator, good, I'll echo what Representative Nimmer has. Good to have you here before us today. I noticed you mentioned something about the probate courts not having been able to, like, you know, in the days when if you got caught night hunting, where you could lose your truck, not just your tires, but the whole truck. But I was wondering, what about helicopters? Can they take those from you?
That is a good question. I wouldn't think they could.
Is that because they don't know how to drive it?
It could possibly be that, or catch it, Representative.
I just didn't know, Mr. Chairman, just if they can do part of the law, if they could do part of the helicopter.
But it'd be kind of tough to shoot a deer at night out of a helicopter.
Well, it'd be easier probably.
I haven't tried yet. I haven't tried.
I was just curious about that.
No personal experience.
There may be a rules amendment, I think.
Yeah, I appreciate your clarification, though.
But I would appreciate us not restricting being able to shoot anything out of a helicopter, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you on that, Senator. We'll move right along on that one. I think we have some clarification coming now. Representative Donahue.
Yes, sir, Mr. Senator. Good to have you here.
Yes, sir. Glad to be here.
What about negligent charge arising from hunting accidents?
I'm sorry.
Is it covered in this section, negligence?
Negligence? You know, that is a good question. If it's in Title 27 of the game laws, I would assume that it is covered under probate court, if that's your question.
We don't think that's covered maybe, but we're going to take it's a question for
Legal.
higher authority.
That's right.
And I think
Kinda
that
over my head.
because of the chain of command in the court system, I believe it would be certainly addressed in there. Representative Al Williams.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. For clarification, if it reached that point of seriousness, it would almost automatically be bound out of probate to superior court, because that would take on a different nature than a hunting violation. It would then move on to superior court. Is that right, lawyer? Thank you, sir. That's $50 for every 30 minutes for me.
That would be outside of my knowledge.
To my knowledge, and I'm in COP, so I don't actually have this jurisdiction, but this is the code section that deals with actual hunting violations.
Yes.
The negligent ramifications or outcomes of the actions of hunting violations.
Yeah.
Other court provision. And then I think your question about like negligent manslaughter or something out of that would be a different kind of a crime charged in the same kind of way. This deals with just the criminal action.
Thank you, Judge. That's outside of the scope of this piece of legislation, I think is where we are.
That would be correct, Mr. Chairman.
Representative Spencer has a question.
That was my
he also had to answer, but I think we got to it, so thank you. Any other questions from committee members? We have to, I think maybe to support this bill today. I'm not sure. We'll hear in just a moment. But we have our probate judge from Cobb County, Judge Kelly Walk.
Yes.
If you would come up, or you may sit by the good senator and use that microphone if you'd like to speak to us and clarify anything.
If you want to sit on the box, you can. I'll take the box out, since it was originally intended for me.
Judge Kelly, we were not going to go there. I'm sorry that we did, but at this time, we're certainly very pleased to have you here with us.
Sign the box before I leave.
Can that be my takeaway?
Forget the box.
To prove I actually showed up?
Senator, I had nothing to do with that, but I'm sure the culprit will come forward before the meeting's over. Judge?
I am here on behalf representing the Probate Judges Council mainly because I'm one of the closest who can make it in. Most of the folks who cover these kinds of things are in farther outlying counties and can't make it in on a rainy midday. But to allay your concerns, the probate judges are in fact very grateful to Senator Tyler for all of his efforts on this bill, to you all for hearing it. Essentially, this bill is reflective of what's happening and has been happening because it wasn't realized that they didn't have jurisdiction. And so DNR was bringing a lot of these charges because they bring all of the hunting at night, and they didn't realize that because it had with a light, it then became a high and aggravated, and high and aggravated kicked it out of probate court jurisdiction. So they had been bringing it under that mistaken understanding, and so this is an attempt to conform law with practice.
Thank you very much. Anybody have a question for the judge? Judge Kelly, thank you.
Absolutely, thank
We
you.
appreciate you being here and appreciate you taking time out of your busy schedule to come in and help clarify these things for us. Senators, is there anything else that you would like to present on this bill?
No, sir, Mr. Chairman. I think that unless there are any other questions, I think, that maybe I probably can't answer them.
Is there any comment from the department or from anybody else before we move on maybe to the next phase of
I will say, Mr.
discussion?
Chairman, the department does support Colonel Eddie Henderson, and the Law Enforcement Division and the department as a whole supports this legislation. They're not opposed.
Not on camera, we see several nods from the department. That is the case. And we appreciate y'all's presence here today.
Mr. Chairman, at appropriate time, I would move to pass.
That time is here, Mr. Vice Chairman. We have a motion of due pass. Do I hear a second? There's a second. At this time, we'll take a vote. All those in favor of moving out SB 62 on to rules, let it be known by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, no. Very good. Senator, if you'll excuse me for a minute, we have an important piece of information we need to present. A important, very special guest with us today, here with Representative Williams, and we would like for him, if it's suitable with him at this time, to make that introduction.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Before, I just wanted to say this, and I don't want to see this cleaned up before the next meeting, but this is the same folder I've had since I joined this illustrious committee when I came into the House. And before the now majority party, when you were in the minority, I was secretary of this committee, and I'm still listed as secretary, so I have some back pay coming.
You're one of the favorites, and since we owe you, so you'll continue to be a favorite until you're well paid. So.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I wanted to take this opportunity just to introduce some folk. My son, Gregory Williams, who you can tell he's my son by his looks. That's him on the left. But I really want to take this opportunity to introduce a very special guest who's here today, and that's Tracy McGrady, who is, of course, between the Orlando Magic and the Houston Rockets, legendary, and without a doubt will be in the NBA's Hall of Fame one day. He's ventured into the business world and is operating in several states in this country, and has been over to China a couple of times, so we'll be hearing a lot more from Tracy McGrady in his retirement days, but I just wanted the committee to get a chance to meet Tracy. Tracy, if you stand up and just let them see you. This is Tracy McGrady.
I will have
senator to stand at this time, so.
Mr. Representative, you are out of order on that one. I can go ahead and tell you right now. Completely out of order. Completely out of order. Mr. Williams, Mr. McGrady, pleasure to have y'all here. I'd like to see some of the early photos of you there, Representative Williams. I mean, what a beautiful head of hair you...
Me falling away.
No, I was going to make it easy. I was thinking about the head of hair. You're saying that. So.
I had it like that.
I'm sure you probably did.
I can't grow it now.
Best of luck to both of you, and certainly enjoy seeing your performance and in the business world also. Thank y'all for being here. We thank a lot of your dad, by the way, even though we have a lot of fun, but we think a lot of him is a good man.
He didn't say what he thought, though.
Thank you, Representative. Thank you for that brief break to make sure we stay on schedule. Now, Senator Tyler Harper is continuing to work with us, and have you spoke with anybody in the House about who may carry House Bill 62?
Jason is going to take care of it. Representative Shaw.
Helicopter amendment.
But we'll work on that amendment. Just wanted to make sure we were kind of on the same page. Wanted to make sure you were helicopter. That's it. All right, we'll move on to Senate Bill 112 at this time. That's LC 400769. Senator Harper.
Yes, sir. This is a department bill that was brought forward by the Department of Natural Resources, and what they're trying to do, and I can, if you have specific questions about the language, and specifically we can go into that, but under current code, in regards to deer, all of that is statutorily defined. DNR, the board, has the ability to provide rules and regs for basically every other species that we hunt in the state of Georgia except for deer, and because of that they are unable to continue to upgrade and conform to 21st century practices. The goal of what we're trying to get to and where we're trying to go and the path we're trying to go down is to allow our hunters in the great state of Georgia, especially when we're discussing hunting deer specifically, is to give them the opportunity to get a reporting and tagging system via their smartphones or iPads or what have you. It would be an option that they could participate in, but this will be done through board rule. And the reason we're doing it through board rule is because having to come back every year and update our code would be a continual practice to update to the current technological advances. This gives the board the authority to do it as they see fit. And I will say, Mr. Chairman, that, and as you well know, that each and every year we also update our code to reflect the board rules that were passed the year before, so we are aware of what the board rules are as they pass each and every year, and this also updates our, this is the annual update bill in regards to board rule as well. So that's what the legislation does. That's the goal of the legislation. A lot of what's being underlined and what you're reading is quote-unquote new language is not necessarily new language, because we are striking code in other sections of the code and moving that into one part of the code to be uniform in what we're trying to accomplish. So that's basically what this legislation does. Mr. Chairman, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Representative LaRicca has one of those questions. Representative?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Allow freshmen to ask questions on the committee.
He's a full-fledged member, I can tell you.
Right, and it is hard to ask my good friend and state senator a question, but because I really trust his decision-making and what he's asking us to do. But I'm one of these that gets a little bit concerned when some of the authority or oversight, if you will, comes out from under the legislative body and goes into a board, because some of us may would agree, in particularly these more rural parts of the state, that we don't think like some of the board members think on some of these issues, and I worry a little bit about letting these boards
have more and more authority, particularly in the future, where you might have a board that is made up of all members that are appointed by a metro person, someone who's from the metro area, maybe they can grow up around quail hunting and fishing and all like we do. So that is a serious question, but again, I trust your knowledge and decision-making. And so I'm not speaking against, I'm just trying to offer maybe a little word of caution.
I will speak to that just briefly, and I understand your concern because, believe me, when the commissioner and I sat down and discussed this bill, I expressed those same concerns to the commissioner. We have discussed this at length. We've discussed that issue at length because I trust the current commissioner. I trust our current governor, and I understand that concern. But we are only discussing harvest reporting and recording. That is it. That's all we're looking at. We're looking at giving the board the authority to make rules and regs in regards to how we report and how we record a deer harvest. So everything else stays under current code. It stays statutorily defined in regards to deer. The only thing that we're giving over to the board, or what this does, is allow the board to have the authority to conform with future technologies in regards to us having the ability to report and record that harvest of that animal. And I understand those concerns, but I don't think that authority will give the board a certain authority to keep or hinder our ability to hunt game in this great state.
Representative Spencer, is that you?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Senator Harper, I noticed under line 35, there's a fee,
That's right.
fine, excuse me. What's the current fine?
But I believe the current fine is $1,000, and this is actually a reduction in fine. Under current law, it falls under a whole heap of other code and that falls under a certain fine. I believe that fine is $1,000 because we're moving some code around and adjusting. The decision was made to lower that fine down to $200 and move it. And actually, the imprisonment is less than what it would be. I can't remember. I want to say it was up to 6 months or up to 12. I don't know if they know right off the top of their head, but I do know the fine is less and the imprisonment time is less here than what it has been under current code.
Representative Donahue.
Just a little food for thought, and I do understand and appreciate what you're doing. One process I would like to see us work toward on the harvest to where we have accurate numbers. In Kentucky, if I'm hunting a certain county, I'm using Kentucky, I hunt there quite a bit also, we pretty much have a card, our license. We call a number with what county we shoot or take that animal in. When we put the number in, pretty much it's a male or a female, they know the harvest of what we took, turkey, deer. Then what they do is give us a confirmation number to write on that license. I would like to see us working toward some type of rules on harvest there for Georgia. It gives us more accurate of how many deer we have, how many deer we're actually harvesting, or turkey. So that's just food for thought.
And just for, can I address that, Mr. Chairman? Representative, I will say that in my conversations with the department and with the commissioner, the goal behind this legislation is to move in that direction. The goal behind this legislation is to move into a direction to where we have a system in place like the state of Kentucky. I'm aware because I have hunted in Kentucky, and you do have to call in your harvest as soon as you harvest that animal. This will allow us to do it via smartphone, via an app on your iPhone or your Android or your BlackBerry or what. I don't know if they'll have it BlackBerry compatible. Not many people have. I still got a BlackBerry, but anyway. But the goal behind this is to head in that direction. Again, it will not be currently will not be mandatory. Maybe the phone system may, but that would be up to the department to decide as they move and try to move us in the future in regards to harvesting and recording in regards to deer in our great state. And this legislation helps move us in that direction and helps get us in down that path. So
Thank you.
That's where we're heading. That's the goal.
Thank you, Senator. Just to let y'all know, and then we're going to accept a question, maybe a motion from Chairman Knight, but we do receive from the department every year the rules and regs that the department, or that the board passes, comes to this committee and also comes into Natural Resources in the Senate. So we've made aware of those, and certainly if anything that we feel is egregious this past, we certainly have the ability to react.
And you have the authority, Mr. Chairman, as you know, we have the authority to not update our code every year. And then that's what we're doing in this legislation as well. If you'll look on line 44, we're striking 2014 and making it 2015 because we're updating the code to reflect the law or the board rule and regs that they have passed up till January of this year. We do that every year. And we do that with a lot of our departments in regards to rules and regs that are passed by the board, and you are correct in stating that those rules and regs are submitted to the House and Senate committees that have oversight in regards to those certain areas, and we have the opportunity to review those before we agree to submit legislation to update our code to reflect their changes in their board rules. So we will have an opportunity to make sure that they're heading in the right direction.
Thank you, Senator. Thanks for the questions. Chairman Knight.
Two quick things. I do want to make a motion, but I think Representative and I think the Senator have touched on probably where this is going, and that is to make sure that we're making compliance easy with reporting the harvest of animals. And I tell you, that's very important, because when we start making the biological decisions about what do we have and how do we protect our natural resources, the game that's out there, that's going to help us make better decisions of what we've got, keep up with the regulations, and make sure we're being the stewards of the game that's out there. So I think that's the ultimate goal here, and I appreciate the Senator carrying this, and great question, Representative Donahue. And Mr. Chairman, I make a motion. We do pass Senate Bill 112.
Have a motion and a second. All those in favor, let it be known by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? You want to waive the rules?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
If those of you don't, some of you have to step out. I have one other announcement if we can make. Representative Bruce.
Yeah, I'm curious.
Wait a minute, Roger, what's the number? It's 5. Okay,
It's 5. I just want to make everybody aware of the event that we do every year after the session is over out at Sweetwater Creek State Park. Put about 2,000 catfish in the lake over there, and then we invite the elementary and middle school age kids to come out. We give them fishing poles, and the Georgia Hunting and Fishing Federation partners with me in doing this. Get a couple thousand folks out there, so I just want to make you aware and make you welcome if you want to come out. It's going to be May the 16th.
Great event, and we appreciate you doing that. It's been very successful for your constituents and all of our constituents. This is probably the last meeting of the year for game fishing parks, and there's something else not near as important as the Senator Harper's bills. So it comes up. So we appreciate y'all's service and your attendance, and we look forward to seeing all of you tomorrow, but we look forward to your continued service on this committee, and we appreciate your service. Thank you. We stand adjourned.